Okay, in this lesson 9.1, we're going to get into something called this subsidiary ledgers and controlling accounts. All right, and we're kind of divide things. We're starting an entire new unit, and not just unit, not just a new chapter, but a whole new section where we're kind of leaving behind the sole proprietorship and the service business, which was Delgado Web Services, and now we're moving into merchandising, or we're reselling. So we're going to talk about merchandising, wholesaling, retailing. What do all those different things mean? And then now we're moving from a sole proprietorship or a mom and pop organization to a corporation, which is publicly owned. What does that entail? We're going to get into that just a little bit in chapter 9. And then what's the relationship between a subsidiary ledger? What in the heck is a subsidiary ledger for starters? And a controlling account. So a lot of things to discuss here. This is going to be video 1 in a 2-part series. All right. So first of all, when we get into talking about a merchandising business, all right, we're talking about selling some sort of physical product as opposed to offering an intangible service. So here we're selling a product. All right. Secondly, we're talking about a merchandising business, one that purchases and resells goods. Now, some companies make their product and then sell it. With a merchandising business, we're buying it from some sort of producer, or we're going to talk about a wholesaler, and then we're reselling it. Now, I know some of you are of driving age, so I think the best example I can give you is Les Schwab Tires, just over here on Meadowbrook. Les Schwab Tires, you know how many tires Les Schwab makes every year? 0. They sell a lot of tires, but they are a tire reseller, and they're very proud of it. And they sell themselves on good service and meeting the customer and having the best prices. But they don't make a tire. They just sell the tires. They are a reseller. All right. Walmart would be the same way. Walmart doesn't produce stuff. They buy stuff in large quantities from manufacturers or wholesalers, and they turn around and sell it to the customer in a merchandising business. All right. Then when we get into a wholesale business, so we're talking about a merchandising business, I got ahead of myself. A merchandising business that sells to those who use or consume the goods is called a retail merchandising business, which means the merchandising business is selling the product to a consumer as an end good. So the consumer is buying it and using it. They're not going and reselling it again. That's called a retail business. They're selling to customers. Again, think Walmart, think Les Schwab are the best examples I can give you of that. Then we have this thing called wholesaling. Maybe you've heard of the term middleman before, but a wholesaler, again, is pretty much a middleman. They're buying it from like a manufacturer and then distributing it to retail merchandising businesses. A wholesale company might have a few direct customers, but hardly any. They are selling their product to businesses who in turn are reselling it to customers. So think of that wholesaler as that person in the middle, the middleman between the manufacturer, the one who made it, and the retailer, one that's selling it to the consumer, retailer. I'll get that word in there. Okay. So a bunch of different terms here related to the kind of company that we're working with. A corporation. Wow. Okay. So first of all, when we talk about a corporation, they have all legal rights of a person, which many persons or other corporations may own. And I guess the thing I always ask the question of is, who owns Microsoft? And the common comment is, well, Bill Gates owns Microsoft. If you look it up, the last time I checked, might have changed. Bill Gates owns about 9% of Microsoft. The rest of people that own Microsoft are people just like you and me who buy and sell shares of stock. And we're going to talk about terminology related to that. But a corporation can be owned by a lot of people publicly, or maybe it's closely held and held privately by just a few individuals. There's all kinds of reasons why people choose to form corporations. One is something called limited liability, which we're going to get into here in a bit. on our next page. All right. Actually, I'm going to skip ahead here. Yeah, there we go. All right. With limited liability, it means the worst thing that can happen is you can lose your share of the company or your share of stock. If you get sued, that's the worst thing. There's limited liability in a corporation. All right. Assets, the things that are owned by a corporation or a business, are called capital. I often think of capital as being the cash needed to run a business, but it's really more than that. It could be the buildings, it could be the equipment, all those kinds of things. And you can even look at your employees as assets, kind of as a form of human capital. That's the term we use. Human capital are the quality of our employees that help to run our business. All right. And again, corporations can be public, sold every day on the New York Stock Exchange, or private, meaning they do not sell stock to the public. They're held by a select few individuals. All right. So there you go. We're moving again from a proprietorship, a mom and pop, to a corporation owned by many people. All right. Well, how do you form a corporation? First of all, every unit of ownership of a corporation is sold in the form of a share of a stock. And these stock shares have prices or values. And this is something we could look up in Yahoo Finance, which I'm going to break on here. Finance.yahoo.com. I'm going to pop this over here. All right. And I'm going to look up Microsoft, MSFT. All right. So right now, if I wanted to buy a share of Microsoft right now, 1:55 p.m. Eastern Time, 10:55 p.m. Pacific Time on January 11th, 2022, it's going to cost me $314.77, and then that keeps changing because this is live numbers. Now, I can't really buy an individual share. I buy them in lots or groups of maybe 100 to 500 shares at a time. But if I buy a share of Microsoft, I become a legal owner with all the rights of an owner of Microsoft. I can share in the profits. I can help them make decisions. I am a stockholder. We also use the term shareholder kind of interchangeably with that. Owner of one or more shares of stock is called a stockholder. And again, we might call them a shareholder as well. The total shares of of ownership in a corporation is called capital stock. And I want to correct that just a little bit. The better term we might use for that is called market capitalization. Capital, all right? If I was to buy all the shares of Microsoft that are out there, how much are they going to be worth? Well, right now, if you look, this number right here, 2.363T, you can probably guess that the T stands for trillion. So right now, Microsoft as a company, if I were to buy all the stock, it's about $2.3 trillion is their stock value. We call that market capitalization. The textbook calls it capital stock, all the stock of a company. So we're learning a lot of terminology here around corporations. It's also something you'll get when we do the investment unit in personal finance, if you have not done that yet. Okay? We form a corporation with something called articles of incorporation that identifies the basic information, characteristics of a corporation. And that's submitted to the state because you have to file with the Secretary of State in the state that you're in to be recognized as a corporation in that state. All right. And then they issue then a charter to that corporation to allow them to begin operations of the corporation. You might have to file some documents with the feds, like the Securities and Exchange Commission, if you want to sell shares of stock and go through that whole process. And if you're publicly held by individuals, you're going to have to make your financial information available public to all of your current and potential investors. Okay. So again, more terminology, which gets us into our subsidiary ledger. And here's where I'm going to end part 1, and I'll continue on with part 2. Thank you as we continue on through moving from sole proprietorship to to corporation. Take care.